Hello everyone, welcome. Thank you for being here this evening. We have primarily staff members and school board members, but we do have some community members here, so thank you for being here. I appreciate it very much. My name is Kate McGuire and I'm the interim superintendent for Anoka-Hennepin Schools. And I'd like to begin by just acknowledging and pointing out some folks in the audience, and I'll begin with our school board members. So school board members, if you would just please stand or raise your hand when I introduce you. We have Marcy Anderson, our school board chairperson, and Erin Hears McCardle. Oh, Erin is over here, thank you. And Casey DeShane is here, one of our school board members. Nicole Hayes is here, and Jeff Simon is here. And Matt Adet might be here, but I don't see him yet, so I'll introduce him if he comes. So thank you for being here. I'm going to provide some introductory information, and then I'm going to introduce Dr. Mary Wolverton, Associate Superintendent for Elementary Schools, and Greg Cole, who is our Chief Operations Officer, and they'll be providing some details about how community members can provide feedback, and then also details about the actual proposals that are in place. And I'm just going to begin with why we're here. So like every good teacher, we begin with the end in mind. So we're here tonight because we need to make some attendance boundary adjustments at the elementary level, throughout the district, and at the middle school level in the Blaine High School cluster. I want to be clear that we are not proposing boundary changes at the high school level at this time. In Anoka-Hennepin, generally, schools in long-established neighborhoods have fewer students, while schools in rapidly growing areas have many more. Most of our schools are clustered in these older neighborhoods in the southern 2/3 of the district. And few schools are located in the northern third, which is now the fastest growing area of the district, specifically Blaine and Ramsey. The student population of some of our schools is declining. And on the other hand, student growth around other schools is exploding. The growth in some of our communities is both exciting and challenging for us because we have to ensure high quality learning environments in every single one of our schools. And when schools are overcrowded, teaching and learning is impacted. And I want to just give you a picture of what that looks like when we say teaching and learning is impacted. For one example, one of our schools is so crowded that they don't use their full media center properly because it's divided for classrooms. One of our elementary schools is so crowded that they don't have a classroom for every teacher, so teachers are moving around between classrooms on rolling carts. Some of our schools may not have enough spaces to meet with small groups of students to provide intervention support, and so academic support might be provided in hallways or atriums. Restrooms, lunchrooms, and other common spaces might be crowded in some of our schools. And then small schools with low enrollment are impacted in other ways. They have so few students that their class size ratios are either above or below what the district would like them to be. And sometimes programming is impacted. For example, right now we have kindergarten students from Sunrise Elementary School who are bused to Johnsville Elementary School for their kindergarten experience. And as a result, then, boundary changes will need to be made at the elementary level and at 2 Blaine cluster middle schools to balance the student enrollment across the district. So tonight, our purpose is to share information, and specifically, we're going to share information about process, about the timeline, the parameters that we use to inform our thinking around these proposals. We're going to share the specific boundary proposals, and we'll talk a little bit about a transition plan. What happens if students need to move, and how do we accommodate them as they come into their new schools? And we're also going to provide a feedback opportunity for community members. A number of staff members that we'll introduce later on will be here to listen to your perspective, but then we also really are inviting community members and families to provide feedback online using the computers that we have set up. The outcome for this evening, in order to help you feel well informed, once we're done sharing information, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions. Staff members will be stationed here and near the maps to answer those questions and to help you provide your feedback if you'd like to have it provided here electronically. We appreciate that you're here tonight to get the facts and to share your perspectives. Our board members are here tonight really as listeners They're going to be looking at all the written community feedback, but they're also here to listen to the presentation and to listen to feedback from community members to inform their thinking as they provide direction to staff at future school board meetings. We know through our annual community survey and from student feedback that families and students are very connected to their teachers and to their schools. It's part of what makes boundary changes so challenging. You'll hear more about the work that we do tonight to ensure similar educational experiences at all of our schools if there does need to be a transition. So at this time, I'm going to introduce Dr. Mary Wolverton, who's the Associate Superintendent for our elementary schools, to give you some additional information.
Thank you, Dr. McGuire. Good evening. As you can see, our boundary update is part of a school board strategic priority. The boundary adjustment process is an action step to ensure efficient operations of district facilities and programs. Anoka-Hennepin, like all school districts, must periodically make changes to balance student enrollment, to ensure that all students have the opportunity to receive comparable educational experiences. The timeline is noted here in the beginning process now for facilities that ensures smooth transitions. The new attendance boundaries will go into effect the fall of 2023-24 school year. That means the process has to start now in order to appropriately inform stakeholders, set up operations, and gather input and feedback. The school board will be making final decisions on the proposals at meetings in November. They would like your feedback prior to this decision making. Details on how to do that will be shared in this presentation. As you can see on this slide, it is noting the timeline for the process. The district is sharing the initial proposals at cluster meetings during the month of September. A presentation of all the proposals will be shared at the September 26th school board meeting. Feedback that is being provided by our community members tonight and at all cluster meetings will also be summarized and shared at that September 26th meeting. The district is planning a proposal of a second round of community meetings during the month of October. At the first school board meeting in November 7th, we will make our initial final recommendations, and then we will go forward to the school board meeting on November 21st for a final school board decision. At this time, I'd like to introduce Greg Cole, our Chief Operations Officer.
Good evening, everyone, and for those of you who are here in person, we welcome you, and then also those of you who are watching us online, thanks for joining us this evening. Just want to talk through, we had a big committee of folks that with various expertises and lenses on our school district get together and evaluate all our boundaries district-wide for our 26 elementary schools and the 5 cluster high schools. So tonight, obviously, we're talking about the Coon Rapids cluster of elementary schools. Those are all the elementary schools whose students will ultimately go to Coon Rapids High School. So what I'm here to share with you is what are the parameters or what are the things that we consider when we're looking at boundaries and whether or not we would keep them the same or change them. So first of all, teacher-student ratio, established by the school board through the budget process, determines adequate space. So frequently we get asked, well, what's the capacity of a school? And our answer is it depends. It depends on what the class size ratios are. It may depend on special programming, and that can change over time. So that the actual capacity of a school may be different, from one year to the next. We look to maintain lower teacher-student ratios at elementary schools, most notably kindergarten and first grade are priorities. We also want to ensure educational supports and programming is based on the student demographics of the attendance boundary. In addition to that, we want to ensure that all students have the opportunity to receive comparable educational experiences. So regardless of which of our 26 elementary schools a student attends, we want to be sure that they get the same access to curriculum and programming regardless of where they go to school. And that's true for our middle schools and high schools as well. We have to follow state guidelines and statutes. And then we put a high emphasis on using our district resources efficiently. So we want to be sure that we're maximizing our spaces to the best possible way that we can in order to meet the needs of all of our students and staff. Another piece of this has to do with transportation. We don't want students on a bus for exorbitantly long periods of time. That's just not healthy for kids. So we look at bus routes and times, ridership times throughout the district to make sure that we're not making kids, particularly smaller kids, ride buses for long periods. We want to facilitate walking to school for students living within a mile of their school. We've had a couple situations where someone's backyard is literally next to a school, but they don't attend that school because of the boundary. Also, boundaries are contiguous and adjoining where possible to minimize disruptions to ensure efficiencies. We've got a couple situations in the Coon Rapids cluster that I'll just share with you in a minute. Maintain current high school attendance boundaries at this time. That's a priority. Consider growth from current and future residential development. And strive to establish boundaries to remain in effect for at least 5 years at elementary schools and 10 years at secondary schools. We also place a high priority on minimizing disruptions to families as much as possible. So, you know, how do you balance contiguous boundaries with minimizing disruptions? We err on the side of minimizing disruptions, you know, in that equation, all things being equal. So at this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Wolverton.
Thank you. And then in relation to the parameters that Mr. Cole just shared, we spent a body of time at the district level with our teams reviewing those parameters and reviewing projected enrollment in the Coon Rapids cluster. With that information, I think we can go to the next slide. There are no proposed changes for the boundaries in the Coon Rapids cluster for our elementary schools in this cluster. This is in alignment with the parameters that we reviewed, as well as looking at two other variables. One, our projected enrollment in the Coon Rapids cluster, and secondly, facilities. As we are moving forward this month in October and in November, we are very supportive and encouraging families in the community to provide additional information for us. If you have the opportunity, we would like you to be able to go on the district website and look at the boundaries for maps, which will include current and proposed boundaries for the 2023-24 school year. Next week, we will have 3 more community meetings. When those community meetings, as they happen, and when we complete them, you will be able to see for each one of our clusters the current attendance area and the proposed attendance area. The district website, which is noted here, provides an excellent link for families to go online and also have access not only to that information, but frequently asked questions that would be supportive for some questions you may have. And as I've just noted, additionally, we encourage families to go on the website, and you will see the 2 different links that is also a venue for you and an opportunity to provide input and feedback for us. One is on the website where you can find out some additional information or send information to us. Additionally, you can also look at the email that is noted and email us directly also. At this time, as we're finishing our presentation, we would like to, as our interim superintendent, Dr. McGuire, noted, have an opportunity for informal conversations for those community members that are here. We have a number of district staff that are in attendance here that you can also interact with us and ask questions, and I'll have them raise their hand. We have our transportation department, our director of transportation, Keith Paulson, and then from our information services department, Nick Herman and Michelle Vandentop. And we also have, I'm just kind of looking around, our chief technology officer, Dr. Joel Verdine, who works with us on projected enrollments. And then we have the elementary principals from our Coon Rapids elementary schools are here as well. So please feel free, as well as the school board members that Dr. McGuire introduced. We also, as you can see over here on our maps, we have the maps on our charts. We have current maps and proposed maps as well. For the Coon Rapids cluster, we would only have the current maps as we are not proposing any changes. At this time, we'll end the presentation, but I want to please encourage you to give us input and feedback, and thank you for attending this evening.